Facebook. We go live on Facebook, but put it on Instagram and then YouTube as well.
Okay.
I'm waiting on notification. Boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have an incredible guest with us, Miss Simone Harris, one who is going to give us some powerful information as well as inspiration. First of all, how are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Excellent,
Thank
excellent.
you again for having me.
Oh, yes, ma'am. The honor is all mine and my family and the viewing audiences. Well, we want to get straight into it. Can you let us know what took place?
Okay, so my son was sentenced to life plus 527 years under the three-strike law here in the state of Delaware. Three-strike law pretty much states that if you commit 3 crimes, you could be going to jail for the rest of your natural life. Now, there were some amendments over the years that put restrictions on the charges. However, in the state of Delaware, up until a couple years ago, it could be any charge that could occur that would make you eligible to be prosecuted under that law.
Yes, ma'am. And once your son was sentenced, how did that affect you and your family?
Well, he was sentenced in March 2014 by the Honorable Judge Jane Brady here in Delaware at the courthouse. And it has been an emotional roller coaster since, because we kept praying and hoping that he would not be charged with that much time. But however, when it hit hard. And I was actually sort of proud of how my son handled it in front of me. But it took me 10 years to find out that that was the first time he cried since that day.
Yes, ma'am. And are you able to go visit him?
Yes. Well, right now because of the COVID, but they have video visits. So I'm able to visit him on a video visit. I believe they just started opening back up as far as having face-to-face visits. So we communicate daily, several times a day.
Okay, great. How can we support you in your effort? I see the behind you, the project. How can we support the project?
Well, we have a website. We created a foundation back in 2015 that is pretty much geared towards the abolishment of the three-strike law. It's called, and we have a website that's www.life+527years.com. So we have a petition, and we have information about the mission of the foundation. It's pretty much surrounded around the habitual offender law and getting rid of it altogether, because it pretty much is an unfair system. Because you have some people who can commit certain crimes, and again, I like to reiterate that we don't make excuses for those who commit crimes. Of course, we need to be accountable for our actions. But the problem is when, for example, a lady kills her mother and her grandmother and receives 20 years for each person, a total of 40 years. And my son, who doesn't kill anyone, you give him life plus 527 years. Now, his history started when he was young, at the age of 16, stealing cars. He got charged with possession of weed. And his last charge, which he did 2 years, was for possession of a firearm. So this is the history that led up to his last charge of robbery that nailed him life plus 527 years. So, it was time to do something, because of course when a lawyer is asking for $30,000 just to sit down and talk about his case, of course, that's something a lot of us can't afford, and especially when you're not guaranteed an outcome. So we had to do something to bring awareness to this situation. He's not the only one, who's been sentenced under this law for things, in my opinion, that don't justify keeping someone for the rest of their life. The sentencing structure was created to provide rehabilitation. And how do you get rehabilitated when you are pretty much given the burden of dying behind those bars? So we needed to do something, and this is what we came up with. Now, the project you see behind me is a docudrama movie, which pretty much is surrounded around the emotional impact that our families and communities endure when our young men are put under these circumstances. And again, like I said, we're not making excuses for their crimes. However, we're just rallying around the fact that these crimes do not justify putting someone behind bars for the rest of their natural lives.
Yes, ma'am. And how can, are people supporting you? And do you feel supported by the community?
Yes. Well, what we did is at one point we went around just to get people's reaction. We tell them what the sentencing is, what the charges were. And most people are like, what? That's ridiculous. Again, like I said, if there's victims involved, we're not, being disrespectful to that fact, but it's when we have a huge issue with the sentencing structure that is going on here, because it's causing overpopulations in our prison, mass incarcerations. And as a matter of fact, when the Attorney General at the time when my son was sentenced was our current president's son, Mr. Biden. And President Biden was a supporter of this law. However, during his recent campaign, he stated that it was a mistake, and he realizes that this was not the way to go. So we look forward, and I say this again and again, to working with Mr. Biden to abolish or get rid of this law altogether. I don't think the amendments, they like I said, they made some amendments to the law, which did in turn release a lot of people. However, we still have a long way to go.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, ma'am. What advice would you give to other mothers who are unfortunately put in a position to see their sons behind bars to keep going? Because your spirit is high, you have a lot of positive energy. What advice would you give to other mothers as far as keeping their spirit up and encouraging, to fight for freedom?
Well, I like to instill the fact that there are a lot of resources and help out here for mothers. If we just do a lot of web searching, to not do it alone. A lot of the problems are that us mothers face is being single parents. Unfortunately, there's a high percentage of families that are single mothers raising our young men that need fathers in their lives. So don't be afraid to ask Uncle Mark or Cousin Kevin to come over and help you with disciplining your child, because there's nothing wrong with sparing a child with the rod, like they used to say. So that is one of the main things I like to tell mothers, especially our young mothers, that it's hard out here when we're taking care of our children all alone, and it's hard to take the burden of the actions that are going on out here in the communities alone. So you would be surprised at the support that you would receive if you just ask, because I know a lot of us say, well, they see what I'm going through, why can't they offer? Sometimes we put our pride before what we need to do. So that is some of the things that is one of the main things that I recommend to our young people. But what we do at this project here that you see that is a docudrama movie is primarily geared towards the preventative measures that we may need to take in order to gear our young men from doing, these type of crimes, to get landed in a prison cell next to my son. This is what we don't want to happen. And this is what we're using this format as more of an awareness of the consequences and the burden that you put on your families and mothers, because when our children are locked up, we're all locked up.
Yes, ma'am.
We're making visits, we're taking phone calls, we're dealing with the pressure, we're dealing with the issues that are going on in the jails, because we have to, in turn, deal with it on the outside because they need our support, especially with the COVID situation. My son caught COVID, and that was like, we were dealing with a lot of stress around that. The prisons were pretty much throwing them in a certain section of the prison and just letting them fend for themselves.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. What keeps you going?
Well, my support group, we have a wonderful cast that has been here for me. We have our the creator, Miss Emlinda Gaines. We've been in contact for many, many years. Even when we started the foundation, she would always keep in touch with me, like, hey sis, what's going on? How you doing? I'm just making sure you're okay. Just making sure you're okay. We have one of my good friends, Mel Fly, who's been there from the beginning, always wanting to support and just asking, what can I do to help? My daughter, always there. She helps me out when I sometimes, it's a burden to pick up that phone and talk to my son, and just it's they don't realize the impact that it has on us as mothers to have to take these phone calls every day, and to think that one day, if something was to happen to me, he's coming to my funeral in shackles, so that's the driven force of me to make sure that my son is one day released from this, from this burden of this life plus 527-year sentence. We also have my good friend Laughing Lenny, who is going to make a special appearance. He's a comedian and actor. We have our Kenya Edwards, who's doing the choreography, who stays on top of me every day, making sure I get things done, because sometimes it's hard to, get up in the morning. Sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's hard. And then we have Isaiah May, Kathleen Charles, who's my son's aunt, Rob Baker, Amin Hassan, Radia Bay, Ahmed Charles, and Julius Williams, who is my son's best friend. Rob Baker and my Julius Williams, I've known them all since they were small. They grew up with my son. They've been there for him. They make visits, they send money, and they've been a great support system, which, these men in jail, sometimes they go in and, they're forgotten about. Some people take the ideal that, hey, look, they want to keep getting in trouble, then nothing we can do for you. But, another thing that I like to enforce is that, we have to realize that men don't mature as early as women do. That's a known fact. So between the ages of 16 and 22, based on statistics, this is a time in men's life where they do the nonsense that gets them locked up. They want to be followers and not leaders, so we have to, change our mindset, and then to think that, okay, they're getting in trouble, that if they give them 10 years, they're 30 something, and 9 times out of 10, when they get out, they're going to do the right thing. Now, there's that percentage where they don't, but, we have to realize that we have to give them their support that they need, irregardless of their past history, because everybody can change. Nobody's perfect. So that's what I like to, reiterate to everyone. But we are definitely going. We started filming 2 weeks ago. Videography by Jerome Upchurch of Buddha Films and Stephen Hands, who's been all but wonderful in supporting us with getting this message out and making it impactful so that people will be aware. I know there's a lot going on out here in the world right now. Even around the sentencing of Mr. George Floyd's killer. We're all anxiously awaiting the sentencing for him. And it's a good understanding because, like I said, we're handing out these life sentences to people who are not even being convicted of killing. But however, we're handing out sentences of 5, 10 years when you kill a certain group of people. So it's clearly unfair. We got a long way to go. Where do we start? Where do we begin is the big question, but we have to start somewhere.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, ma'am. Well, we want to encourage everyone to how can we, what's the website again that we can go to?
It's www.lifeplus, we spell plus out, PLUS 527years.com. And you'll have all the information on the history of the 3-strike law and the updates on the project that we're now in production of.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you again, as you're getting so much love on the comments on Facebook, people encouraging you. Thank you all very much. And we look forward to putting this on YouTube. I want to just send love and positive energy to you and your family and your son. And God willing, he will be released. And anything that we can do, anytime you want to come back, if you have any mothers or anybody else who would like to share their story, that we can do our part just by promoting it and informing people. We just want to encourage you, and you're such a strong woman, sister. So I support you, and thank you. And please don't give up. You have the support of us, and anything that we can do to support you, that means a lot. Just let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, and you keep doing your positive influence the community like you're doing. And I appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off of the People's Podcast. Thank you again, ma'am.
Thank you.